Yeah, and David's a good friend, too. Hello, Iowa. How are you? It's really cold here. So glad to see you. Thank you so much. It's actually I'm wearing my grandfather's hat. Well, not now, but I'm wearing my grandfather's hat today because can't hear me. How's that? I'm wearing my grandfather's hat while I'm here because my grandfather was born just about 30 miles away from here. My grandmother and my mother were born in Applington, Iowa, right? And it feels like old home week, which is really appropriate because of the things I want to talk to you about. First of all, why are we all here? Thought you would answer that. That's not why we're here. We are here. No man is the solution to our problems. We are here really because we all have a simple belief that things can be better, that things don't have to be this hard, that tomorrow will be better. In fact, the future of our children will be better tomorrow than all of our yesterdays combined. That's what we believe as Americans. But America, for the last at least maybe as long as 10, 12 years, has started to lose faith in herself. We don't believe the things that we used to. And the world is now looking at us wondering if America is done, and too many of Americans actually wonder themselves whether they're done. I would imagine, as we've been through this drill so many times together, I would imagine that you question somewhat yourself. Is this it? Is this as good as it's going to get? And the reason why we question that is because without vision, the people shall perish. And there is no vision. But we've been here before. It was a very cold day, a little colder than this one. December 24th, 1776, on the banks of the Potomac. We had lost every single battle. George Washington, they were starting to say that he was a crazy man, that he wasn't capable, that he was absolutely the wrong general. And they were there around a campfire that night. We had 20,000 in our military. We were down to just under 2,000. And he was feeling we have to turn around and cross the Delaware. And everyone in the camp with him said, he's a crazy man. He's going to get us all killed. They had lost faith. We had lost faith during the Civil War. We had lost, halfway through, the North had lost every single battle. We were fighting brother against brother, and Lincoln wept. In World War II, we were outgunned. In World War II, we were outmaneuvered. When Japan hit us in 1941, we didn't know what hit us. We weren't ready. We didn't have the ships. We didn't have the planes. America was already tired from the Great Depression. The First World War had worn them out, and evil was spreading the world. I remember hearing the stories of the Depression and World War II from my grandparents, and still to this day, I don't know how, if you lived in those times, you didn't think, my gosh, this is the time of Christ's return. Evil, unlike we had ever seen, was spreading all over the world. Then we were beaten down by the 60s, and the violence in the streets in the 60s, and the corruption of the 70s, and the burning helicopters in Iran, and the gas lines that were around the block, and interest rates that were at 18%. But here's the news I want to give to you today. The good news is that is always when America is at her best. When we're down on the mat, and everybody else is saying 8, 9, that's when we come roaring back. We find ourselves again, we reroute ourselves in eternal principles, and we change the world. Let's not forget who we are. We are the people We're the people that brought literal light to the world with a light bulb and the radio and the automobile and the telephone. We're the only nation that landed on the moon and on Mars. Our farmlands feed the world. We're the birthplace of the dreamers that brought us Microsoft and Apple and Google. And here in Iowa, there are kids this age that are just beginning to start to have dreams of their own and starting to say, maybe I can change the world. And because they are born in America, because they live in this great nation, they actually will change the world. That's who we are. That's who we are, and that's who we have forgotten. That's what we have forgotten, and no president will ever give you that. Nobody, I don't care who he is, no man can give you that. And no matter how hard the last administration has tried, no man can snuff that out. But it's what we yearn for. It's what the people who live on another continent, who look across the ocean, that's what they yearn for. That's what the people who are now wasting away in some Iranian prison, or people who are working in some slave shop in China, or are actually on the slave auction block for ISIS. This is what they live for. This is what they dream of, what we have. But where are we? We're lost. We're hopeless. Many people in our country are angry. We stand at the crossroads of fundamental transformation. Hear me. That's what he set out to do, our last president, to fundamentally transform the United States of America. But it will be the next president that finishes that transformation one way or another. What has happened in the last 100 years with the progressive movement will either be stopped dead in its tracks by the next president, or our country and our Constitution will be lost as we understand it. So how do we put ourselves back on the right track? How do we get there? What is it that we need? The press today has been reporting that I am here to endorse Ted Cruz. But let me tell you, in 40 years of broadcast, I have never endorsed any candidate. And I haven't endorsed any candidate mainly because for a lot of those years, nobody really wanted my endorsement. And quite honestly, I've never endorsed anybody because I don't trust any of the weasels, no matter how good they are. So today, I want to talk to you about principles. We spoke of these principles day after day after day on Fox, and I still do day after day after day on radio and on The Blaze. They boil down to three things: faith, hope, and charity. Faith, hope, and charity. The first one is faith in God. You want to restore our country, you want to restore our Constitution, and have a better tomorrow for our children, faith in God, but not showman faith. Not the things that you might have read about in 2 Corinthians. But the faith that changes you. The faith that goes into your heart and changes everything. The way you see, the way you act, the way you behave. So we need that in a leader, and we should all ask ourselves, by their fruits ye shall know them. By their fruits ye shall know them. So what are the fruits of the presidential candidates? What are they? Does your candidate, whoever it is you're thinking about, and I hope there are people that are thinking about other candidates that are here. We have really good candidates that are running, really good. I wouldn't have thought 5 or 8 years ago that we could have this many good, solid candidates. We have them. But ask yourself, whoever it is you're voting for, what are their fruits? Does your candidate have a record of years of standing boldly for your right to worship, to make sure that the 10 Commandments are in public spaces, winning the Heller case, so you have the right to the Second Amendment. Does your candidate have the record of going against his own party, his own president, George W. Bush, to stand to make sure that a dirtbag illegal immigrant who had come in and horribly, brutally raped and murdered actually was not saved by the international court, but faced the courts of Texas and received the penalty of death as they deserved? Has your candidate spent his entire life to make sure that you have those constitutional rights that you were endowed by your Creator to have? The George Washington that we need will be found in the quiet yet bold service, standing tirelessly for those principles that we all say are self-evident. Where does your candidate find his treasure? Does he find his treasure in gold, or is his treasure somewhere else? And we have to look at faith in another way. Faith in God is paramount. But there's another. And I check this over and over again, for God forbid I say and misquote somebody here, that'll be the only thing that the press will run. So I checked this over and over again to make sure it was exactly right. Mr. Trump is saying over and over again on the road, I will make America great again. I will make America great. That's not true. It's not even possible. Each of us as individuals, living our own dreams, making our own way, charting our own course, that is what makes America great. Anything else is faith in self, and it is empty. It's the human ego, and it is arrogant, and it is dangerous. We have already had a president tell us in the last few years, you didn't build that. You didn't build that. We knew that was wrong. This is the same thing. I'll make America great. No, we the people will make America great. It's the tell of a progressive president. And you have to watch for them. The Republicans don't want to hear this now, but I've been saying, it's why I was only invited to speak at CPAC one time, because I brought the chalkboard out and I said, you guys started it. Progressivism is in both parties, and you must look for the tell. It is just as dangerous on our side as it is on their side. The next president cannot be a repeat of this president, who thought with a stroke of his pen he could make the seas recede, or that he was worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize just because he showed up. We need a president that is a servant of God and a servant of the Constitution. He must have less faith in himself and more faith in God, the Constitution, and the American people. So the next one is hope. Faith and hope. Where does hope come from? Hope is elusive unless you know its root, and its root is the truth. The reason why God can give people such hope in the face of such adversity is because you know the truth of God. So only with the truth is there hope. A cancer patient will say the same thing to the doctor over and over again. Just shoot straight with me. Just tell me the truth. Why? Because they know if you tell me, fill me full of lies, it'll be false hope and I'll be dead. Tell me how bad it is, doc, and then tell me and chart the course, and we'll make it together. That gives a man or a woman hope. So here it is. Here's the truth. This may come down, our Constitution, our entire history as a nation, may come down to what you do a week from Monday. Our country has a deep metastasized cancer. And it is not just progressivism, the enemy of the Constitution. It is hopelessness. It is despair. It is anger. It's racism. It's cronyism. It's lawlessness, unlike anything I have ever witnessed at the highest levels. This, I believe, may be our last shot to save the Republic of the Constitution, or the United States of America. And we are lying to ourselves. We're lying to ourselves, and we're accepting the lies from the politicians. And let me just start with the elephant in the room. Here's the biggest lie that no one will say out loud that needs to be spoken. Hillary Clinton should be in prison. I knew it was wrong when my father supported Richard Nixon after he lied, and my father said they're all like that. They're just singling him out. I knew it was wrong then with a Republican. It's wrong with a Democrat today. The law is the law. If I would go to prison, you should go to prison. But that comes from truth. You don't have faith in the political system. You don't have hope because there is no truth in this system. The same thing with the economy. They tell us it's getting better, it's getting better, it's getting better. No, it's not. It's rigged. It is rigged. Our banks, our big businesses, they are rigged. Capitalism has become a cruel joke. If you don't have connections, if you don't have a high-priced attorney, or you're unwilling to pay to play, capitalism means nothing to you. Our politicians now accept legal bribes or outrageous speaking fees, and they take these fees for special favors, and they exchange those special favors, and our conservative candidates actually stand on the stage and boast about writing those checks for politicians. And we're supposed to say it's okay because they will say that's just the way business is done. Damn it, no, it is not. We cannot accept that. We must not continue to lower the bar. We have to start raising the bar. We must do the right thing even if it is at our own expense. How many of us would die today if it meant that our children would live a brighter, better day tomorrow? That's who we are. It's time to start doing the hard things, but demanding that our politicians do it as well. That means they have to tell the truth about our jobs, the rigged game of cronyism, race, Islam, terror on the streets of Chicago, our failing families, and the role that each of us as individuals play, the hard truth. Most of you know my history. And if you don't, hello, my name is Glenn and I'm an alcoholic. I was terrified the first time I said that. I was actually trying to throw my career away. I stood on the air and I said, you know what? You think you know me, you don't know me, I'm a bad guy, and here's what's happening in my life. That day saved me. Admitting my problems saved me. You know the story of my life, not because somebody exposed me, but because I felt it was important to tell you. Why? Because it tells you how I view the world. How did I come to those conclusions? Where was I in my past, and how is it that I believe these things now? If we don't speak honestly with ourselves and others, we cannot grow. But I tell you this also because I want you to understand, I truly believe in pivot points. The point in your life where things are so out of control that you're just like, I can't do it anymore. That's when a man changes. When there is a crisis in his life, a man changes fundamentally or dies. I also believe in redemption. The hope of the world does not come from our mistakes, but our admitting them, falling to our knees and begging for forgiveness, and then changing our life. That's the hope of the world. And there are many great candidates, but I want to be honest with you. I mean this sincerely. It's down to two. It's down to two. And the press has already picked, and so has the establishment, who the winner is. And if it is even close, you might lose everything. If you believe like I believe. We're at that point. And so we have to look at people. It's a two-person race. The other guy has said that he hasn't done anything in his life that actually makes him feel like he should ask forgiveness from God. The hubris of that is astonishing. As if for the last 8 years we have watched a narcissist in the Oval Office and it's meant nothing to us. It's frightening, the hubris. Now, I can't judge his soul. I don't want to judge his soul. We're not supposed to judge his soul. But I'm telling you now, as citizens, we are required to judge a man's record. And his record is very clear. I have not heard a pivot point. Not one. Not one. What happened in his life that was so tragic, so important, that he changed almost every fundamental principle he has held since birth? Now think of this. We're not talking about slight differences in policy. We are talking about I'm a die-hard person for abortion, I'm against abortion. And all the way down the line, what happened in his life that should give us a clue that says, yes, I know that happened, but you can believe him. You can believe him. He has not talked about that. Why? Why? He doesn't, it's up to him to ask for God's forgiveness. But I would like to suggest to you that the man owes America an apology, and he should ask conservatives in America for forgiveness for supporting billions of dollars of bailouts, for calling for the nationalization of our banks. He should ask for forgiveness for giving money to prop up Anthony Weiner, Nancy Pelosi, and Rahm Emanuel. And while all of us were standing up for our principles and marching and being ridiculed about being little teabaggers, while that was going on in 2010, and we were giving everything and looking each other in the eye and truly saying, my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor, he was writing a check to Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid. I think an apology is in order at the very least. Honesty, faith, and truth are basic requirements. And quite honestly, I have to tell you, this probably is not going to go over well, but it's why I like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is like, yep, I'm a socialist. Yep, I think there's 2 R's in America, one in the middle and one in the end. America. That's just who I am. I can actually sit at a table with a man who says, yes, I'm a socialist, and yes, I don't like what we're doing. We should be more like Denmark. What we really need in America is enough of these politicians who are telling us what we want to hear, hiding behind fancy language, and actually have a debate between a constitutionalist like Ted Cruz and a socialist like Bernie Sanders, and let's really, truly decide. The last principle is charity. And this one is so important to America. We're the most charitable nation in the world. We always have been. And nobody had to make us that way. It's who we are. It's in our heart because we know the truth and because we have faith. we are automatically charitable. But even this is lost on us. We do need a safety net for people who truly need it. And we must keep our promises to people that we have made those promises to. But I think it needs to start with our veterans. We made promises to our veterans. They did their job. Now it's time for us to do our job. And without the government red tape, we made them fight for freedom with their hands tied behind their back. There should be no rules of engagement at a hospital when they go to be healed. But we do this not by some bureaucrat. We do this by a president who recognizes the Constitution and says, get out of the way of the public sector. Let the medical professionals do what they do best and want to do, heal. But charity also, it's important for us to realize that a new time is coming. We must look at charity ourselves. We must no longer look away from the alcoholic, the out of work, the orphan, the single struggling mom, those who mourn or those who are afraid. We must take personal responsibility. But these are the values of Iowa. They're the values of the heartland. They always have been. We've just lost the coast. The coasts have been lost. We just need to make that an American principle again, that we have a responsibility. The Good Samaritan didn't call the government. He wasn't like, give me the blue pages and the yellow book. I need to find out who will take care of this guy. He picked him up himself. He took him. He helped heal him. He watched over him. It's our responsibility. The government isn't the solution. The government is the problem. We are the solution. But while we're on charity, our next president must understand that charity can never be used as a tool. To simply take the bread from another man's sweat is wrong, simply because you don't want to work. So that means that this misguided idea of compassion must end. FDR said, if you take a man's ability to work away from him, if you don't give him the ability to work, you will take away his self-worth. Ben Franklin, who's the guy who started the first volunteer fireman, the first public hospital, he gave away the Lincoln or the Franklin stove because others could be warmed, and he didn't want to charge anybody for it. His own choice. Even this charitable man said, at times, the best way to help people is to compassionately make them feel uncomfortable in their poverty. But here's where the compassion comes in. By strengthening people and encouraging them to do what they must and should do for themselves, we build strong and engaged citizens who have faith and hope in a better future. And charity begins at home. If we don't get a hold of our borders, if our next president is as lax on these borders as the last few presidents have been, we are done as a nation. We are the lifeboat for the world. But if others come in to swamp the lifeboat, nobody's going to be helped. And all those who wish to do us harm or to bleed us dry must be sent home. But the last point I want to make on charity is this, and this one's hard for me personally. Donald Trump has spent an awful lot of airtime today mocking and ridiculing me, and that's totally fine. I mean, look at me. It's not hard to do. We have to be more charitable towards each other. We're at each other's throats right now. Everybody seems to be an enemy just because we disagree. It doesn't make us sellouts or traitors. I read somebody, an extremist on the right, an extremist said of Mark Levin, just because he stood for Ted Cruz this week, He called him in a publication a filthy Jew. This isn't who we are. Left and right, Christian, non, black, white, all of it. But that's not who we are. We're Americans. And if we're deeply rooted in our principles, if what we're fighting for is rooted in principles, then we just disagree on the way to get there. And is that way liberty, constitutional liberty, or tyranny? Which is the way? I believe that we are a nation of laws and not of men. But we have lost that. So who is it that will lead us back to that place? Last names don't mean anything, even if you splash it on the back of a plane, or your husband was the president, or your brother and your dad were president. It doesn't mean anything. Who are you? Our laws and our principles and our values. That's what means something. What's broken in our country is not our economy. What's broken in our country is our faith in God and our faith in each other, our faith in our principles and our values. A lot of people are voting because I think this guy he'll fix it. No, we'll fix it. God will fix it. Our principles will fix it. They brought us this far. They will take us home again. Our next president will choose up to 4 Supreme Court justices. What is currently being won 5-4 in this next term could be lost 8-1. We do not recover. And even with the most benign, friendly, happy progressives like the Bushes, they have just a touch of progressivism. Look at who they chose for the Supreme Court. Look what happened, John Roberts. We must have someone who knows the Supreme Court and knows the next 4 we get. The time for silliness and reality show tactics is past. It's been fun. But Iowa, I beg you, my children's future depend on what you do a week from Monday. I told Ted Cruz before he was senator, he came into my office and he was on the air with us for a while. We grilled him. I didn't know who he was. And quite honestly, I mean, he kind of talks like a politician, you know? But I've seen him with his boots off and kick back on the couch with his hands behind, and that's the way he is all the time. So that's not like, he's in politician mode. No, that's him all the time. And it's real. But I didn't know it at the time. I just watched him and I thought, you say all the right things. And I took him in the office and I said it to him on the air, but I said it to him in person. And I said, I just want you to know, if you're not who you say you are, I'm going to be your worst nightmare. I don't have any friends in Washington for a reason. I tell the truth. And I have watched him. I have watched him relentlessly. And the great thing is, it's the David and Goliath story. You want somebody with guts? You want somebody who's bold? It's not some guy who's got a bunch of, strip clubs in casinos. It's a guy who stands on his principles relentlessly when everybody in the media, everybody in the other party, and everybody in his own party says, I ain't with you, man. You're a loser. I'm going to stop you. And he still stands against the tide. This is the American story. We root for the little guy. We still look for that guy who stands against all odds. That's who we are at our core. There's a lot of great people running. I like Marco Rubio. I have some real problems with his policies, especially on the NSA. But I like him. He's a decent man. Ben Carson, a really good, decent, honorable, God-fearing man. I just don't think he's ready. I wish he was, but I don't think he's ready. Rand Paul, strong on the Constitution and a good guy. But I will tell you this. If Ted Cruz, those guys are not going to win in Iowa. They might win down the road. They're not going to win in Iowa. And if Donald Trump wins, it's going to be a snowball to hell. It is important, if you believe any of the things that I have said today, it is important that you find where you're supposed to caucus. It's crazy. This system of yours is nuts. Move to Texas. We make it easy. But we don't count. You do. You will decide. I may never get a chance to vote for my guy if you don't get out and vote. So, our choice is clear. Do we stand with the bullies? Do we stand with the people who buy and sell favors, those who destroy, smear, use every Saul Alinsky tactic because the ends justify the means? Or do we stand with the little guy who still believes that if you do the right thing, if you play by the rules, you work hard, you're tireless in your efforts, that you will change the world, that you will win, but yet is humble enough to know that it's not about winning. It's about how you play the game that really counts. That's who we need to find. The next president, and I've told all of them this, and I've said this on the air, and I mean this sincerely, and I mean this with everything. Everybody mocked me on the caliphate, but I knew that to be true. And I will tell you this, people may mock me on this, but I am telling you now, we are at that crossroad. And if we do not do the right thing, God can only give us so much. It's up to us. If we do not do the right thing, the next president is facing at least what Lincoln faced. Trouble the size of Lincoln. And the next president may end up being Lincoln, and in all that means. I've said this to every candidate, and I can tell you, most of them, not all of them, most of them look at me, then look down at the ground and look back up and say, I know. Ted Cruz knows. He must be Lincoln, and he may also have to be Washington, because the next guy who comes in, he either finishes the job that Woodrow Wilson started, or he repoints the cornerstones. A collapse is coming. Whether we are knocked out and fundamentally transformed will be up to us and you next Monday. But he has to repoint the cornerstone. So who does that? Who is the man that will have malice toward none and can bind the wounds of our nation? Ted Cruz. I brought this today out of my out of the vaults that we have in our studios, where we keep things that are just really, really rare and precious. Ted, is Ted backstage? Can he come up? I hope he is, because I'm done. Ted, come here. So I didn't tell Ted this, but here's a man who knows. Ted, what is the oath of office that you would have to take? What? Oh, dear God, if you don't know this. Everything I said was wrong. When you raise your right hand, what are you going to have to say?
That I will pledge to honor and defend the Constitution of the United States of America.
Okay. Honor and defend the Constitution. Not to make sure that there's two chickens in every pot, not to make sure that he equals out wealth disparity, not to make sure that we don't have warm weather or anything like that, but to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. This man was spoon-fed from a child the Bible and the Constitution. He knows the cornerstone and where it needs to be pointed. This is George Washington's compass. It's the only compass he ever owned. He was a surveyor. So every battle he was ever at, everything he ever did. And Ted, I want you to hold this and put your finger right here. If you hold it there, see if you can feel the thumbprint? I'm convinced it's where Washington, as he was thinking, did this and thought. And the reason why is because I did a show one time on Fox where I could have said some very nasty things about some people, and I had a long list of people to say those things about. And I didn't want to. And I took that and I put it in my pocket. And all during that show, if you knew what episode it was, you would see my hand is in the pocket, and I am rubbing that compass saying, stay true, stay true. I'm taking a very big risk here and gamble, but this is how much I believe in Ted Cruz. I'd like you to hold on to that as you're going through and people are slinging mud, to make sure that your compass is square and that you stay true to the values that I know you have. Let me just say this last thing. I can't believe I actually have to say this, but for the first time in a long time, the press was right. I am here to announce that I am officially endorsing Ted Cruz to become the first Hispanic president of the United States, the first generation president of the United States, the most conservative president of the United States since Ronald Reagan, and the next president of the United States, Ted Cruz.